Our warm-up today has two different problems. The first question asks, what percentage of the shape is pink? And so looking at our shape right here, we have to first find the part over the whole. And then take our fraction and change it into a percent. In order to find our part, we can look at how many pieces are pink. We have one piece that is pink over how many pieces make up the whole. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So one slice out of all 10 is colored pink. We now need to change the 1 over 10 into a percent. In order to do so, we can set up a proportion. Remember that fractions are part out of 100. So to get from 10 to 100, we would have to multiply by 10, and so we have to do the same thing on top. 1 times 10 is 10. So we have a fraction, 10 over 100, and because a fraction is something out of 100, we can say confidently that 10% of our shape is pink. Our next two warm-up problems ask us to write each sentence as an algebraic expression. In order to do so, we need to remember thinking English into math English. So, first one says, twice a number decreased by 29 is 7. What I always like to do is pick out my operations. I see decreased by, and I know it means minus, and I also see the word is, which always means equal. And we're going to call our number n. So we have twice a number n. Twice is multiplying it by 2, so 2n. Decreased by, or minus, our 29 is, or equals, our 7. So I just took our sentence and I changed it into an algebraic equation. We're going to do the same thing with part B. Part B tells us 12 is 16 less than 4 times a number. Once again, I'm going to pick out my operation words. I see is, which means equal, less than, remember the word then, flips things around and means minus it. And then times is going to be multiplication. So we have 12, is already our equal sign. And then 16 less than 4 times a number, we're going to flip them around. So we would want to put 16 here, but because of the less than, we're going to actually put it on the other side. In our extra blank that we have, we're going to put 4 times a number, which is going to be n again. And so this sentence that we started with turned into our algebraic equation. So today we're going to be starting a new unit dealing with percents and ratios. And by the end of our unit, by the end of today's lesson, you should be able to say that I can calculate percents from percent equations and percent proportions. And we're going to talk about how to do them both ways. A little introduction. A percent proportion is exactly what it sounds like. A proportion dealing with percents. And proportions are always a part over a whole. One side of your percent proportion is going to be dealing with numbers or amounts, while the other side of your percent proportion is going to be dealing with exactly what it is, percents. And remember that a whole percent is always out of 100. So you're going to have a part of a percent out of the whole, which would be 100. The next type of equation we're going to work with is percent equations. When writing percent equations, you take your percent in decimal form, which is essential to remember, of, which remember is times, your whole, which is going to be the whole of something, is, remember, is equal to, a part. So we have our percent, the percent in decimal form, the percent in decimal form times our whole equal to a part. And both of these are going to come in handy throughout the lesson. Our first question asks us, what is 4% of 30? And when we set up our proportion, remember, we need to do a part over a whole equals a part over a whole. I like to start with the percent. So we see 4%. Remember, 4 over 100. The part over the whole equals to something else, another part over a whole dealing with numbers. 4% of a whole 30. Because 30 is a whole, it would go on the bottom. And in our empty spot, we're going to put our x, and that is what we're solving for. So, in order to solve, you would cross multiply. So I would take 4 times 30 equals 100 times x, which then gives me 120 equals 100x. And if I divide by 100, I end up with x equals 1.2. So 4% of 30 would be 1.2. We can do the same problem using a percent equation. Remember, a percent equation is your percent in decimal form times the whole equals the part. So what is 4% as a decimal times our whole, or 30, equals your unknown, which is our part. 400ths times 30 gives us x equals 1.2. 4% of 30 is 1 2/10. Our next problem is asking 85 is 21% of what? So, when you see 85 is 21%, or a number is a percent, that means that this is now a part, our percent, and we are finding, or our unknown is the whole. Knowing that, we can easily set up our proportion or our equation. Remember, proportions are part over whole. I'm going to start with our percent. 21 out of a whole 100 equals our part of 85 over our unknown. And we can also set up the equation right away. And remember, the equation is percent in decimal form, so 21/100ths, times our whole, which this case is unknown, so we're going to just call it x, equals our part, which is 85. Going back to the proportion, if we solve by cross multiplication, we get 21x equals 8,500. Dividing by 21 on both sides, we end up getting x equals 404 76/100ths. So 85 is 21% of 404 76/100ths. Going over to our percent equation, we can solve once again. 21/100ths x equals 85. Divide by 21/100ths. And we'll once more get x equals 404 76/100ths. Our final new example asks us the question, what percent of 33 is 5? What percent is what we're finding, or our unknown? Our percent is x, of 33. That means that that is our whole. Is 5. 5 is our part. So to set up our proportion, our percent is unknown out of 100 equals a part, which is 5, over the whole, which is 33. The percent equation, this already reads like we know it as. It's our percent as a decimal, remember that for later, times the whole of 33 equals our part, which is 5. Now, in order to solve, we're going to go back to the proportion, cross multiply. 33x equals 500. Divide by 33 to both sides, and you end up with x equals 15 and 15/100ths. Now, when we go to the percent equation, if we, also remember it's a percent, so our final answer should have a percent sign on it. Now, going back to the percent equation. When we divide by 33 to solve for x, this is going to give us a decimal. X equals 0.1515. However, that is not a percent. This is not a percent. We have to change it to a percent. So we're going to have to multiply by 100. So, because it was in decimal form, we have to change it to a percent, and then we get 15 and 15/100ths% when we multiply by 100 for our final answer. Do not forget that step.